So now we're building inequalities and equations to solve problems. So Jenny likes to make earrings, bracelets, and necklaces out of old bicycle parts and sell them at the farmer's market. The parts she used cost her $65. To make it simple for her and her customers, she sells each item for $8, and the place she sets her booth up costs $25. Well, the first thing that we need to do is to identify the two quantities that are changing in this situation. So what's changing? Well, her cost was $65, and the place where she sets up her booth is $25. That's not changing. That was just a one-time cost. But what is changing is probably how many bracelets she sells, or necklaces, or items, right? So really, it's going to be the items that she sells, the number of items, and then the other thing that's going to change is how much money she takes in. So we need to identify the independent and dependent quantities and define the variables for these quantities. So what depends on the other? Well, the independent is what the dependent one depends on. So we know that the amount of money that we make depends on how many items we sell. And the independent is always the x value. So our dependent is going to be our y value, and that's going to be the amount of money. Now, the amount of money what? The amount of money, that she makes, right? So profit, really. So now we want to write an equation that will show when Jenny will start to make a profit. So her profit, y, is going to equal, the cost, or the amount of money that she's already paid out. So that's really going to be the 65, so that's really a negative number, and the 25. And again, that's a negative number, at least as far as the profit is concerned. And so that's $90. So she starts kind of in the hole at $90. But to that negative 90, she's going to add $8 every time she sells an item. And again, this represents the total profit. So now let's make a table of values that represents this situation. So our x, of course, is going to be the number of items. The y is going to be the total profit. And just doing some quick mental math, it's going to be, if she sells 11 items, you can tell that's going to be $88, so she's really close to breaking even. So let's put down some items. First of all, of course, let's start out with 0. If she sells 0 items, of course, she's in the whole 90. But then let's maybe go with, 4. What happens with 4 items? How about with 7 items? With 9? Let's go with 12, and how about 15? So really then we're just going to plug in each one of these to our x value. 8 times 4 is 32, and then add that to a negative 90. So negative 58, and then 8 times 7 is 56. So negative 90 plus 56 is negative 34, so she's slowly climbing out of the hole here. 9 times 8 is 72, so negative 90 plus 72 is negative 18. Now 12 we know should put her a little bit into the black. Red, of course, is debt, and black is into the profit. So that's $6, and now for 15. So now she's finally $30 profit. Next, let's identify the unit rate of change in this situation. And of course, the rate of change is what makes it go from one thing to another. Well, it's this 8 that's making us go from one thing to another. And I always say, put your units on it. 8 what per what? Well, it's $8 per item. And that describes exactly what it is. That unit rate of change is $8 per item. And so the nice thing about this equation is that anybody can give us any number, whether it's a number of items or a dollar amount, whether it's in the whole or a profit, and we can figure out how many items she'll need to sell. So for instance, how many items would she have to sell to only be half in the hole, so like negative 45. Well, we use our equation, this negative 90 plus 8x, and if we have a negative $45, well, that's a y value, so we have to recognize that someone's asked us, and so we'll plug that in place of the y in this equation. So negative 45 equals negative 90 plus 8x. And then, of course, to isolate x, we would undo this negative 90 by adding 90 to both sides, which puts us at a 45, positive 45, equals 8x, and then we would divide both sides by 8. So it's not going to come out evenly, but we know that it's really close to between 5 and 6, right? In fact, it's 5.625 or 5 5/8. And that's items. So we would say, well, it'd be in between 5 and 6 items. Maybe put an S on that. Or, we could say, well, how much money will she have made when she sells 20 items? Well, this time they've given us an X value. It might have helped us over here is to put a dollar sign on that, and that would have helped us know to put it in place of the y. And now we just do y equals negative 90 plus 8 times 20, so 160. So we take 90 away from 160, and that should be 70. So she'll have made $70 profit. So it's really convenient whether someone gives us a dollar amount, whether it's positive or negative, and an item amount. Of course, it wouldn't make sense to have negative items in this case. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to construct a graph for this problem situation. What we need to consider is, at least in our chart, our x values have gone from 0 to 15. And usually we're working on a 10 by 10. So we'll have to decide how to count on those 10. And then on the y, we're going from negative 90 up to positive 30. And that's a difference of 120. So again, on a 10 by 10, we have to decide what we're going to count by. So let's move that up a little bit more so I have room to make a graph. And I'll start to draw my graph. So since I need to get to 15 and I have 10 spots, I really have to count by 2s. And even though I'm going to count by 2s, I'm going to label by 4s. So I leave the 2 open, then 4. I'm not going to write 6, mostly because of scrunching. 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And that's really as high as I need to go since I only need to get to 15. But I'll finish it out 18 and 20. And then up the side, this one's going to be a little bit strange because I have to start clear down at negative 90. And I know I need to go 120, which means I have to count by 12s, which might be a little odd, especially since I'm starting in the negative. So I guess for my convenience, I'm going to count by 15s, and I'm going to call this 0 right here. And again, I'm not going to label every one, but right above that would be 15, and above that would be 30. Below it would be negative 15, then negative 30, negative 45, then negative 60, negative 75, then negative 90. And then that's about as low as I need to go. But I'm going to kind of draw a darker horizontal line right through here just to remind me that that's really my 0. I'm not used to my axis being like this. And then I plot my points. And they don't exactly line up because I freehanded this, but you can see that there's basically a line right through there. And that's our graph. So now the inequality part of this comes in. If we were to ask, well, for how many items does she make a profit? Well, we see our break-even point again is right, or that's our 0 profit. And we know that it was in between 11 and 12. And so really we would say for x, because x represents the number of items, and I should have labeled number of items. And the amount of money was on the y-axis, where x is greater than 11. Or another way we could have written that is where x is greater than or equal to 12 items. On the graph, we would circle this part. That's where she's making a profit. That's above $0. We could also rewrite our equation to reflect that. Because again, y represents the total profit, and we want that to be greater than the negative 90 plus 8x.